So the Switch 2 has come out, and there's, as ever with a launch, there's been problems. Not necessarily caused by Nintendo themselves, but by retailers either cancelling orders or shipping orders late, which is pretty much Amazon, which is why I never pre-order from Amazon. Or, as we have seen with GameStop in the USA, where they've been stapling the box, the receipt to the box, and puncturing the box with the staple, and they use these huge bloody great staples, and then piercing the screen that's underneath. Now, there are a lot of people saying if Nintendo had produced a better box, then this wouldn't have happened. But then you would think that the GameStop employees would think to check what it is they're actually stapling to or puncturing before putting it in. And if you think about it, the original Switch 2 was packaged in a very similar way, where the device itself was actually pretty close to this to that lid. So we're seeing a lot of avoidable things that are upsetting and causing people grief and a bit of heartache. Amazon taking pre-orders, telling people, yeah, you're going to get your Switch 2 on launch day, and then days before or even the day before saying to people, actually it's the 7th and we shouldn't have said the 5th. That's pretty common for Amazon, to be fair. Which is why I never pre-order anything like a console, where it's, you know, it's always going to be problematic for the volumes that Amazon deal with. And then of course we have the naysayers about the Switch 2, and people saying, well, it's, you know, it's just a 7 out of 10, it's just a Switch Pro, it's just this, it's just that. And yeah, in lots of ways, I don't know what people wanted or would have had expected from Switch 2. It was always just going to be a much better version of the Switch. There's just no other way around it. It's not going to be fundamentally different from the Switch, because that was such an enormous success. Why, you know, Nintendo have learnt their lesson of changing from that they did from the Wii to the Wii U, which was a complete disaster and very confusing. So they're just keeping the design very similar. The specs are bigger and better in every way possible. The games are an awful lot better graphically. You may not see that necessarily, you know, that it's sort of night and day, but it's more of a subtle thing. Certainly with Mario, the new Mario game, you can see there's a massive difference between that and previous versions on the Switch, the original Switch. And also, like yesterday, last night, I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, and that's an oldish game now, and I loved it because of the increase in resolution, the better visuals, the better graphics, the better, you know, the update that they've given to it is so much better. You know, yeah, there is the occasional bit where you see a bit of a low res thing, but most of the time what they've done with it is really good, and there's lots of sort of quality of life aspects of two that you find with games that have a Switch 2 version, where they've just sort of updated the graphics, made them more appealing. There's certainly gone is all the fuzziness and everything, and I think that's oddly one of the things I like most, is the clarity of everything within the Switch 2. Even the UI, although not fundamentally different, it is different in a better way. Just how much faster things load, and overall, you know, it's a more polished experience. And when you're playing things like Tears of the Kingdom, it's kind of how you imagined and wanted it to be when it originally launched. And this is kind of where we are now with the Switch 2. Is it's really what it should have been. But because of the hardware limitations of the Switch, even when it was launched, it was a bit dated, such is the way with Nintendo. And they've learned their lesson. They thought, right, okay, we've got to make something an awful lot better. Apparently the system is 10 times more powerful than the original Switch. And from what I've seen, from playing the Mario kart game with 24 other players, not a single hitch or anything. It was seamless, enjoyable, really fun playing that sort of thing where you just got this not permadeath, where people sort of disappear. You've got to reach a certain position, otherwise you get booted off. That was a lot of fun. But overall, you know, I really like it. It is expensive. I paid for it a very long time ago when it first came out. I couldn't afford it now, but yeah, I'm glad I stuck with it, and I would recommend it. You know, is it a necessary purchase? Nah, not really. You know, it's going to get 7 out of 10 reviews mostly, I think, and I would probably agree with that most of the time. And it kind of is that way with most console launches. They never get sort of 10s or 9s. At most they get 8s. So yeah, you know, as ever with any console purchase, it's not a necessary purchase in any regard. So yeah, but overall I like it. I like and just to prove that I do have one, people say you're just talking. So yeah, there we go. Let's get a thumbnail, I suppose. Let's try and get a thumbnail. And yeah, you know, I think it's pretty good. The other thing that's really interesting for me is not only is the screen an awful lot better, but the internal speakers are streets ahead of the original Switch. And the UI is a lot more polished, just looks a lot better. Yeah, you know, I think it's pretty good. I've been playing it mostly on the TV. I don't tend to sort of play handheld, but I'll probably give it a go over the weekend just to see what the go is. See if, you know, if it's worth doing that, playing that way. But overall, you know, I rate it. It's comfortable. Not as comfortable as a Steam Deck. You still got this sort of space under your hand, which kind of, and then you find that this sort of is not the most comfortable feeling. You know, you've got that there, but most of the time, you know, I don't know. It's certainly not as I had a Steam Deck ages ago, and I wouldn't say it's certainly not as comfortable as that. The build quality is an awful lot better than the original Switch. You know, the whole feel of everything is solid. There's no creaks. Remember, the original Switch was really creaky. This isn't. This is, you know, really solid. It actually feels like a premium bit of kit. So yeah, I actually really like it. More than what I thought I would. Because I always had an issue with the original Switch, is that I've actually had 3 of them, maybe even 4 of them over the years, where I buy one, I get bored with it relatively quickly because the graphics weren't that great, the games were okay, you know, I'd play Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild or anything like that. Maybe a bit of Mario, and then, you know, I'd forget about it and it would be stuck there, and then eventually I'd sell it, and then another game would come along, and then I'd buy the bloody thing. I've done that about 4 times. But yeah, I think with this one, I'll certainly keep it. Is the screen as good as the OLED? I think it is. You know, I sold my OLED Switch just the other day, and I think it's better, or certainly on a par in terms of brightness and colour. So yeah, if you're thinking of buying one and you've already got a Switch original one, especially the OLED one, probably hold fire for a bit, because there isn't that many Switch 2 games that are really worth buying. You know, the Mario Kart one, yeah, it's okay. You know, it's a good game, but is it worth buying just for that? Probably not. Yeah, you know, there's just wait to see what they're going to do with it, I think. You know, because it is a lot of money. I think people were expecting or hoping for around about 300, and then when they announced it at 400 or £400 or 430 with a game, that's a lot, isn't it? You know, when you think you can get a PS5 for that easy. So those are my thoughts. I know it's a bit rambly, but yeah, you know, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. That's my that's my score. I kind of like it.